So following the keynote address by the Basic Education Minister Siviwe Gwarube at the Inaugural Dialogue on Education Partnership, let's take a look at the future of education in the country. That particular gathering was aimed at, amongst other things, trying to claw down or clamp back on the country's unemployment rate. To have this discussion, let's bring in Professor Mpho Primus, who's the co-director at the Institute for Artificial Intelligence Systems with the University of Johannesburg, and in fact is involved in research that explores teaching AI-operated software and robotics to be responsive commands in South Africa's indigenous languages. It's a fascinating area of study. Prof Primus, thanks very much indeed for your time. And we reached out to experts like yourselves because part of what the minister said yesterday is that we need to start thinking critically about ways in which there could be a whole lot more skills acquisition and development at even a primary high school level. And in my mind, that cannot really happen without us factoring the conversation around artificial intelligence.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ayanda, for having me. I think the minister is right. We really need to rethink and reform our curriculum as to where we are as a society, as part of a global world, and what skills are needed to impart it on our kids from basic education, not even from basic education, but from early childhood development up until they reach an age where they can enter the workforce, whether they choose to come to university or at TVET, or they actually choose the entrepreneurial route. It doesn't hurt for them to have the skills that entrepreneurship needs.
Absolutely. And insofar as that is concerned, I wonder what your experience says about where to start. And I'll admit, I'm among the people who, whenever anybody mentions artificial intelligence, quiver a little bit because of just how little we know about this tool, which is apparently going to revolutionize the way we do a lot of things.
I mean, the main premise of artificial intelligence is basically modeling human intelligence into systems. And from the 50s, it's always been about operational efficiency, how we solve problems faster than the human mind. And this has revolutionized, our daily lives, right? Every sector is now affected by the systems. But nonetheless, the core foundation of AI is basically mathematics, it's logic, it's human knowledge representation in systems. And this is why mathematics education is very, very, very important, right? We cannot just jump to fancy words like AI without understanding the basics that are needed for students to be able to grasp it. So, and what is mathematics? Mathematics is basically creativity and problem solving in the purest, most clear way that doesn't allow for ambiguity. So basically, this is what we need to impart from early childhood development.
Right. There's a lot said about whether or not we've got the teachers with the requisite skill to get this right. And I wonder whether you've got any kind of commentary around, ways in which at least we can empower teachers in order to start kickstarting that process.
We really need a cultural reform in basic education and in childhood development and how we teach concepts, how we demystify concepts. And this is something that has to happen from the teaching level on its own. And this is not the first time we're talking about curriculum reform. We had CAPS coming in and people, we were all scared. When OBE came in, I mean, I'm old enough to not have been part of OBE. But, we've always had this curriculum reforms. These are necessary changes that need to be had. And this is also where we actually look at teachers and say, these are the skills that they have. This is where we need to move as a country in our education system, in basic education. And what skills do we need to reskill and upskill the teachers? And some of this conversation and these reforms have been happening. If you look at curriculums like your Montessori, which is a bit private, of course, but those kind of reforms have been happening. And of course, the public education system can also do that. And it should actually do it. It's not like we have a choice.
Right. It's interesting that you kind of draw this back to mathematics in its most elementary form, even though you are involved in a social science when it comes to indigenous languages. Essentially, my question is around whether or not it's enough for us to just allow people to continue with the social science without thinking critically about how maths could help them, if you know what I mean. I come from a background where people very eagerly admit that they're not good at mathematics and so never get involved in those kind of conversations. But your area of research and study is at the intersection, quite frankly, of these two areas of study, which I think leaves all of us a whole lot more enriched.
Yeah, so this is the interesting fact. So I'm in it that, my work intersects computer science as well as linguistics, which is languages. And we always talk about data AI systems. And the fact of the matter is our languages don't have enough digital data so that we can train these nice, sophisticated models that we see for English and German and French. So this puts people like me and forces people like me to go back to formal rules, right? Symbolic AI is what we call it, neural AI, trying to write mathematical rules, sitting down and saying this is how a human would actually speak or pronounce this word, and actually modeling it using mathematics. So there's this disconnect really in reality should not exist between the social sciences and the mathematical sciences, right? It's basically how we then bring the two together as we are doing in computational linguistics. Digital humanities is another field that has come up in the last decade that measures, mathematics and the social sciences. This is what I'm saying, is how we teach mathematics that demystifies it and takes the scary monster out of mathematics that becomes more important and more applicable to the student and the learners.
Yeah, it's about pedagogy in some ways. It's a fascinating area of study, and I've heard many people saying we simply cannot avoid artificial intelligence if we are to keep up. So hopefully this is the first of many discussions. But for now, Prof, thanks very much indeed for your time. Really do appreciate it. Professor Mpho Primus is the co-director at the Institute for Artificial Intelligence Systems with the University of Johannesburg.